Imagine closing your eyes in a quiet room, where only the sound of soft breathing and the slowing rhythm of your heartbeat remains. You may think that the world around you is built from bricks, from buildings, from roads, or from the noisy machines of human invention. But perhaps everything you see today began from something far more invisible, an idea. This is the very first paradox of human history. What can change the entire destiny of humanity is not an army, not a king, but a single spark flashing inside someone's mind. An idea may be fragile, like a fleeting breath, like a dream appearing for a moment in the night. But once it takes root in the human mind, it becomes a fire that nothing can extinguish. Think back to the story of the idea that the earth is round. In ancient times, when most of humanity believed we lived upon a flat surface, someone dared to think differently. A sphere, suspended in space, circling a giant star. That idea, at first only a whisper among scholars and far from certain, would centuries later guide ships across oceans, opening the age of exploration and connecting distant lands once thought forever separated. A single imagined curve redrew the map of the world. Then came the idea of zero. At first glance, zero is nothing, pure emptiness. Yet that very nothing created a revolution in mathematics. Thanks to zero, humans could calculate complex systems, write the formulas of the universe, program computers, and eventually build the internet. From an empty symbol, humanity created a virtual world linking billions of people. A hollow circle changed the history of humankind. Do you see the paradox here? The things that are invisible, uncertain, even seeming not to exist, are often the firmest foundations of our world today. The idea of human rights cannot be touched, yet it overturned empires once thought eternal. The idea of freedom has no shape, yet it compelled millions to rise and fight. The idea of money is nothing but faith in a piece of paper, yet it fuels the entire global economy. Every idea, when it first emerges, is so small that few notice it. But history shows that the smallest things often carry the greatest power. Think of the idea of democracy. When it first appeared in ancient Greece, it was nothing more than a political experiment in a few small city-states. No one imagined that thousands of years later, it would become the model shaping global politics, forever changing how humans understand power, freedom, and civic responsibility. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, are we truly the masters of ideas, or are ideas mastering us? We think we use money, but imagine one day when you have no money in your pocket. Would you still feel secure? We think we enjoy the internet, but recall the last time you turned off your phone and stayed away from social media for even a single day. The idea of connection, of value, of existence itself, these are like invisible threads wrapped around us, gentle, yet tight until we begin to mistake them for our very flesh and blood. This is the paradox you are living every moment. Ideas are born from humans, yet they are the very things that shape humans. An idea may begin as nothing more than a sound, a symbol, a line of writing, but eventually, it becomes a wall surrounding your entire life. You cannot escape, because it is not only out there, it is inside your very thinking, your feelings, your love, and even your fear. So tonight, as you close your eyes, let this question travel with you into sleep. If the world can be changed forever by a single idea, then which idea is changing you right now? When we look back at the ideas that shaped history, we often see only the final picture of success. We see great buildings, glowing cities, celebrated constitutions, but few remember that it all began from a vague moment, often dismissed as madness. Think of the idea of electricity. Before the light bulb became an ordinary part of life, who dared to believe that a bolt of lightning, an invisible current of energy, could be tamed and carried into every home? When Benjamin Franklin tied a kite under a storm, many laughed at him. But the idea that humans could capture the power of nature opened the door to the entire technological era. From what seemed a reckless experiment, humanity entered a world filled with light, or the idea of germs. In the Middle Ages, when plagues spread everywhere, people believed they were punishments from the gods. Yet a few doctors clung to a strange hypothesis that tiny invisible organisms, too small for the human eye to see, were killing millions. At the time, this idea was mocked and rejected. But then, the microscope revealed the truth, and medicine was changed forever. What could not be seen became the key to saving billions of lives. Once again, the paradox appears. We trust what our eyes and ears tell us, but the most powerful forces often lie beyond our perception. The world is shaped not only by the stones we step upon, but also by the abstract concepts we struggle to accept at first. By now, you may see one truth. Ideas are like seeds falling into the soil of the mind. Some are buried, some are crushed, but some take root and grow into forests that cover entire civilizations. The idea of written language is one such seed. At first, it was only rough marks on stone walls, but eventually, it became alphabets, books, and then the internet. And from there, this single idea gave birth to countless others. It is worth reflecting that language does not only record ideas, but also sets the limits of ideas. You can only think what you have words to describe. So if a language has no word for freedom, how can its speakers fully imagine what freedom means? The paradox is this. Language gives us wings to fly into the realm of ideas, but at the same time, it is the invisible cage that confines thought. Think of the idea of time. Humans once lived by the cycles of the sun and the moon. But when we invented the clock, the idea of hours, minutes, seconds began to shape every life. When you wake, how long you work. When you sleep, everything is framed by the hands of the clock. On one hand, it gave us order and structure. On the other, it turned time into a burden. We race against it, fearing being left behind, when in truth, time is only an idea humans created to measure eternity. Likewise, the idea of nations divided humanity into imagined borders. If you look at the Earth from space, you will not see a single line. Yet in our minds, those lines are stronger than any mountain or river. They make humans willing to sacrifice, to fight, even to kill. A thin mark of ink on a map can decide the lives of millions. And so the paradox becomes clear. We created ideas to serve us, yet gradually we became their servants. Humans believe they own language, time, money, nations. But in reality, perhaps it is these very ideas that own us. Ask yourself, how many decisions in your life are truly your own? And how many are simply responses to ideas planted inside you? You go to school to earn a diploma. That is an idea of value. You go to work to earn money. That is an idea of existence. You fall in love, partly because the idea of romantic love has been woven for generations into books, movies, and songs. When you reflect on this, you will discover a deeper paradox. We think we are living, but perhaps we are merely characters in the story of ideas. And when night falls, when the lights fade, when the noise of the world quiets down, are you left with yourself, or only with the ideas that continue whispering in your mind? Let this question remain with you, like a dream that has no answer. If 100 ideas have already changed humanity forever, then which idea is quietly shaping you right now? An idea you have chosen, or an idea that has chosen you? In the darkness of night, as you let go and allow your mind to drift more slowly, try to imagine this. There are ideas that not only change the outer world, but also change the way we see ourselves. These ideas are like invisible mirrors. When we look into them, we no longer see a single isolated human being, but rather a reflection of the entire history of humankind. One of these mirrors is the idea of evolution. Before Darwin, people believed that we were created perfect and unchanging. But when the idea of natural selection appeared, the entire foundation of belief was shaken. Suddenly, we were no longer the center of the universe, but just one small branch in the vast ocean of life. A paradox emerged. The idea made us seem smaller, yet that very smallness connected us with all of life around us. Then came the idea of an expanding universe. Long ago, the night sky was only seen as a sparkling dome above our heads. But when science showed that galaxies are moving apart, that the universe is not fixed but stretching wider, humanity was stunned. We realized that the Earth is not only small, but also floating inside an endless space without boundaries. And yet, the paradox is this: the more we realize our smallness, the more we yearn to find meaning in every single moment. Some ideas do not stir cosmic wonder, but strike directly at the human heart. Take the idea of gender equality. For much of history, society fixed the roles of men and women as two unchangeable poles. Then, some dared to declare that women deserve education, work, and respect, just as men do. At first, this idea was resisted, even ridiculed. But slowly, it changed laws, changed schools, and changed the way we see one another. And even now, millions continue to plant the seeds of this idea. Next is the idea of the internet. If electricity is the bloodstream of the modern world, then the internet is its nervous system. It began with a simple idea: connecting information between computers. But once that seed took root, it grew into an endless forest, where each person can reach one another with a single touch of a finger. The paradox is that the internet was created to connect us, but sometimes it makes us lonelier than ever. It brings the knowledge of the entire world, but also pulls us into a maze with no clear way out. There are also ideas that lie on the border between hope and danger, like the idea of nuclear energy. It began with a dream of harnessing atomic power, a source of limitless energy that could light up cities and provide electricity for all of humanity. But the very same idea led to Hiroshima and Nagasaki and awakened the terror of global destruction. The paradox appeared: one idea can both save the world and erase the world. Now, think of the idea of artificial intelligence. We dream of creating machines that can think, to serve us, to assist us, to share the burden. But with each step forward, new questions arise. Are we creating a tool or giving birth to a new kind of species? Artificial intelligence is the product of the human mind, but the paradox is that it may soon become a mirror, forcing us to look again at what it even means to be human. You see, every idea is like a door. Once you open it, you can never go back to the way things were. Once you know the earth is round, you cannot return to believing it is flat. Once you connect to the internet, you cannot live as though you never knew it. Once you see the infinite sky, you cannot think of the universe as ending in a dome. And this is the strange power of ideas. They do not only change the world, they change forever the people who encounter them. So among the ideas you just heard: evolution, the universe, gender equality, the internet, nuclear power, artificial intelligence, ask yourself, which idea has made it impossible for you to see the world the way you once did? There are ideas that not only open a new path for humanity, but also erase the old foundations, forcing us to redefine the world from the beginning. Let us start with the idea of human rights. For much of history, people lived in rigid hierarchies: kings and slaves, nobles and commoners. But then, one idea was spoken: all human beings are created equal. At first, these words were only a faint echo in revolutions. But gradually, they were written into constitutions, spread across continents, and became a shared moral foundation. The paradox lies in this: what seems obvious, that every person has equal value, took thousands of years of struggle and blood to be recognized. And even now, this idea has not been fully realized. Next, think of the idea of modern medicine. In the past, Illness was seen as destiny. But then, humanity conceived a new idea, that the body can be healed through science. From antibiotics to vaccines to delicate surgeries, all of it began with the belief that disease is not a curse, but a phenomenon that can be understood and controlled. The paradox is this: the more skilled we become at defeating disease, the more we face new illnesses, more complex challenges, making this race one that never ends. Another idea changed how humans communicate forever: the idea of printing. When Gutenberg created the printing press, he could not have imagined that this idea would shatter the boundaries of knowledge. From rare books kept only by priests, knowledge suddenly flowed everywhere. The strange paradox is that printing freed the mind, but also spread prejudice and propaganda. A single printed page can save a soul, but it can also ignite a war. Then came the idea of experimental science. Humanity once believed that truth was decided by gods or by authority. But then, someone dared to say, test it, observe it, verify it, and the world entered the age of science. But at the same time, a paradox appeared. Science freed us from superstition, yet also led many into the trap of arrogance, believing that only what can be measured is real, forgetting the depths of spirit and soul. Now look at the idea of globalization. Humans once lived in closed-off communities, but today, through trade, goods and cultures flow across borders, and we have become one vast network. The paradox is this: the more the world comes closer together, the more we sometimes feel apart. On one hand, globalization lets you drink coffee from Africa, use a phone built in Asia, and talk with someone in America. On the other hand, it makes many lose their sense of identity, adrift in the ocean of blended cultures. And finally, in this passage, we must mention the idea of the environment and climate. For centuries, humans saw nature as an endless resource to conquer. But then a new idea arose. The earth is not an enemy to defeat, but a fragile home to protect. The paradox is this: the more we realize its fragility, the more we see how much we have already harmed it. The idea of saving the planet arrived too late. But without it, the future of humanity may disappear. When you look back at this chain of ideas, from human rights, medicine, printing, experimental science, globalization, to the environment, you will notice a strange flow. Each idea opens a new freedom, but also ties us with new challenges. And perhaps this is the greatest paradox of all. Ideas are born to set us free, yet they also create new chains, only more subtle ones. So, as you close your eyes, ask yourself this: among the countless ideas shaping humanity, is there any idea that truly gives absolute freedom? Or is freedom itself only another idea, beautiful, but just as fragile as all the rest? There are ideas that are not simply inventions or discoveries, but mirrors reflecting the very nature of humanity. When we look into them, we see both the light and the darkness within ourselves. One such idea is the idea of modern war. At first, war seems to be about actions, about blood and steel. But hidden beneath it lies a set of ideas: sovereignty, power, glory, sacrifice. The belief that humans can use violence to resolve conflict has followed us for thousands of years. And yet, the paradox is this: war itself has given birth to many new ideas, from technology and medicine to diplomacy. Advances in surgery, in computers, and even the internet all trace part of their origin to conflict. So is war a catastrophe? Or is it also the root of progress? This question pulls us into a spiral that is difficult to escape. Another idea, seemingly simple but deeply profound, is the idea of romantic love. In many ancient cultures, marriage was an arrangement, and love was not at the center. But through poetry, music, and novels, people began to celebrate love as the highest value. This idea brought happiness, inspiration, and timeless songs, but it also gave rise to heartbreak, loss, and tragedy. The paradox is that what we call the sweetest gift of humanity is also what makes us most vulnerable. Then consider the idea of individual freedom. Humans once lived in communities where the collective was always placed above the individual. But when the idea of the individual at the center appeared, it unleashed creativity, opened philosophy, culture, and art. Yet, along with personal freedom came isolation, division, and disconnection. We gained the right to choose our own path, but sometimes at the cost of losing the feeling of belonging. Another idea completely shifted our perception of the universe: Einstein's theory of relativity. Before it, time and space were seen as solid, unchanging frameworks. But then came the idea that space could bend, and time could stretch, shattering everything familiar. To imagine that two twins could age differently simply because they moved at different speeds, that was a shock to the mind. The paradox emerges. Even what we thought most certain, time itself, is not truly absolute. Alongside this, pause for the idea of democracy. It opened an age where power no longer belonged to a single person or a small group, but to the many. This idea gave a voice to those who had been silent. Yet it also revealed a paradox. When everyone has a voice, those voices can merge into chaos. Democracy freed humanity, but also showed us that collective freedom will never mean absolute agreement. Finally, in this section, we must speak of the idea of compulsory education. Once, knowledge was reserved for the few, but when humanity decided that every child must be educated, society changed forever. Education opened the doors to science, technology, and art. But the paradox is this: at the same time, it became a system that often imprisoned imagination. Some children blossom in schools, but many are forced into molds, losing their natural creativity. When you look at all these ideas — modern war, romantic love, individual freedom, relativity, democracy, compulsory education — you will see that each carries both light and shadow. They liberate humanity, yet also bind humanity. They open doors, but sometimes they themselves become the new walls. And so, let one question echo within you, like a whisper in the night. Perhaps ideas are neither friend nor enemy, but only mirrors reflecting what humanity wishes to see, and sometimes what humanity wishes to hide. There are ideas that not only change the outer world, but also turn the inner world upside down. They do not build cities, they do not invent tools, yet they shape how we think, how we feel, and how we understand our very existence. Let us begin with the idea of the unconscious. Before Freud, humans believed they controlled their minds, that every thought had a clear reason. But then came the idea that there is a deeper layer, holding memories, instincts, and hidden desires. This shook us. The paradox appeared. We thought we were masters of our minds, but perhaps we are only guests inside a house where most rooms are locked. Another idea transformed the entire economy and politics: capitalism. It began as a belief that free exchange could enrich both sides. But gradually, it grew into a system covering the world. The paradox is this: capitalism created prosperity never seen before, but it also deepened the gap between rich and poor. It promised freedom of choice, but also pulled humanity into an endless spiral of consumption. Alongside it came communism, a counter-idea: the belief that all wealth must be shared, that no one owns privately, that humans can live in a classless society. It was the dream of perfect equality. But in practice, many experiments became dictatorships, where personal freedom was suffocated. The paradox is this: an idea born from the desire for fairness often turned into a new tool of oppression. Then think of the idea of creating gods. For thousands of years, religion shaped every corner of life. Faith in the divine brought hope, morality, and community. But it also fueled wars, division, and fear. The paradox here: an idea born to free humanity from anxiety became the very cause of deeper fears. Another idea, seemingly practical but deeply philosophical, is the idea of paper money and credit. Gold and silver are tangible, but a printed note or a number in a bank account is invisible, existing only through collective trust. Yet it wields the power to guide nearly every decision in our lives. The paradox: we think we control money, but in truth, money, an abstract idea, controls how we love, how we work, how we dream. Finally, in this section, let us pause at the idea of progress. Modern humans almost automatically believe that everything will become better with time, that tomorrow's science will surpass today's, that life will be more comfortable in the future than it is now. But the paradox is this: belief in progress makes us run endlessly forward, sometimes forgetting that happiness is not found at the destination, but in the present moment. The idea of progress, instead of giving peace, often turns into a race with no finish line. When you look back at these ideas, the unconscious, capitalism, communism, religion, money, progress, you will see one truth: they do not only build the world, they also build mirrors for us to see ourselves. Every idea promises liberation, but each carries within it the seed of bondage. So, as you close your eyes and drift into sleep, let this question echo: are we living in a world made of ideas, or are we only living inside beautiful cages built by ideas themselves? There are ideas that do not come from scientists or philosophers, but arise from the deepest longing of humanity, the longing to find meaning. These ideas do not only shape society, they quietly weave themselves into every breath of each individual. Let us begin with the idea of happiness. For thousands of years, happiness has always been what humans seek. Yet strangely, happiness is not an object, nor a place. It is only an idea, changing with each era. At times, happiness meant a long life and many descendants. At times, it was tied to political freedom. At times, it became material possession. And today, with social media, happiness is often measured by the number of likes. The paradox here is this: the more we chase happiness, the more it slips away, as if the very act of pursuit pushes it further from our hands. Another idea that turned the course of history is the idea of racial equality. For much of human history, skin color, origin, and birth determined destiny. But slowly, small voices joined together, forming movements of resistance. All people are created equal ceased to be a political slogan and became a moral truth. Yet the paradox is this: the more we affirm equality, the more we are forced to face the countless inequalities still present. This idea is like a torch of light, but the brighter it shines, the more clearly we see the darkness around us. Now pause at the idea of shared humanity. Once, humans only knew their village, their tribe, their nation. But when the idea that all humanity is one arose, it opened doors to compassion, aid, and international cooperation. For the first time, we could look at strangers and still see them as part of ourselves. But the paradox is this: even as the slogan of one humanity echoes everywhere, the world remains divided. Wars continue, and at times, people invoke humanity to justify invasions. Another idea, quiet yet far-reaching, is the idea of privacy. In the past, human life was bound to the community, and private space scarcely existed. But with the rise of individualism, People began to value the private, a room of one's own, a sealed letter, a silence not to be disturbed. Yet in the age of technology, privacy has become a luxury. What you search for, where you go, even what you think, can all be tracked and analyzed. The paradox. Privacy, once a triumph of social progress, is now disappearing because of social progress itself. Think of the idea of justice under law. Long ago, power belonged to the strong. But when humanity created legal systems, everyone became equal under shared rules. Law became the thread that held society back from chaos. Yet the paradox is this: law, meant to protect justice, can sometimes become the mask that hides injustice. A verdict may be correct by the letter, yet wrong in spirit. Law is both a scale and a curtain, and we never truly know which one we stand before. Finally, in this section, consider the idea of art as free expression. From the caves of Lascaux to modern theaters, humans have drawn, sung, and told stories as a way of affirming existence. Art lets us escape boundaries and surpass the limits of language. But the paradox is this: the freer art becomes, the more easily it can be commercialized. A painting once born from the soul can become a commodity at an auction. Art liberates us, yet also makes us wonder: are we looking at a dream or only at a price tag? When you gather these ideas, happiness, racial equality, shared humanity, privacy, justice, and art as freedom, you will see one shared flow. They are all born from noble aspirations, but when brought into reality, they continually give rise to shadows. And so, let this question follow you into sleep. Do all beautiful ideas carry within them a shadow? And is that shadow the reminder that humanity can never touch perfection? There are ideas that do not explode like scientific discoveries or political reforms, but spread quietly, seeping into daily life and everyday habits. They are not always named, but their power is undeniable. Let us begin with the idea of labor as a moral value. In many cultures, especially since the Industrial Revolution, hard work was lifted up as a standard. The diligent were respected, the idle were shamed. It seems like an obvious truth, but in fact it is only a collective idea, a belief created to keep society's machinery running. The paradox is this: labor was meant to serve life, yet often life becomes the tool that serves labor. Another idea, seemingly simple but transformative, is the idea of children's rights. For most of history, children were treated as the property of parents, without their own voices. But when humanity began to recognize that children are independent beings who must be protected, educated, and loved, the world changed. Yet even as this idea is celebrated, millions of children still work, still suffer abuse, still live in war. The paradox is this: we all declare children are the future, and yet at times we abandon that very future with our own hands. Now, think of the idea of mental health. In the past, the mind was dismissed compared to the body. The mentally ill were thought to be possessed, weak, and were cast out of communities. But then came the idea that the mind, too, needs care, that depression or anxiety are not sins but human conditions, and a door to healing opened. The paradox is this: the more we value mental health, the more we also see that modern society itself creates pressures that wound the mind more than ever. Another idea has reshaped the way humanity communicates: the idea of a global language. English, once a local tongue, has become a common medium for billions of people. The dream of one shared voice has created closeness and cross-border understanding. Yet the paradox is this: as one language dominates, thousands of native languages fade, carrying with them unique memories and cultures. One language helps us understand one another better, but also erases many other ways of understanding the world. Now, look at the idea of urbanization. From small villages, humans dreamed of great cities, where lights never go out. Cities became symbols of progress, of comfort, of opportunity. But at the same time, they became the places where loneliness can be deepest, where people live crowded, yet rarely look into one another's eyes. The paradox. We built cities to be closer, but cities often push us further apart. And finally, in this section, consider the idea of extended lifespan. Since ancient times, humans have longed to live longer, even to be immortal. Modern medicine has extended average lifespans, giving humanity more years of life. But the paradox is this: living longer does not mean living happier. Some people endure long years of illness and loneliness. Some societies struggle between caring for the old and providing opportunities for the young. The dream of immortality, thought to free us from fear, sometimes leaves us more confused than ever. When you look back at these ideas, labor as morality, children's rights, mental health, a global language, urbanization, extended lifespan, you will notice one common thread. They were born from compassion and the desire for progress, yet they create unforeseen consequences that leave us torn in two. And as night falls, as you lie still in the darkness, let this question softly echo in your mind. Do all great ideas carry within them a debt? And is that debt the price humanity must pay in order to grow? There are ideas that do not exist in material form, but live in words, in the endless debates of humanity. They are not easy to touch, yet they have the power to shape societies and futures. Let us begin with the idea of freedom of speech. Humans have longed to speak their true voices without fear. When this idea was written into constitutions, it became one of the pillars of the modern world. Yet the paradox is this: freedom of speech opens both light and shadow. It allows truth to be spoken, but also allows lies, hatred, and falsehoods to spread. It is as if humanity gave itself wings, but is never sure if those wings will lift us higher or send us falling. Another idea that seeps into our daily lives is the idea of the digital world. When the internet, smartphones, and social media were born, we began to live in two worlds, one of flesh, one of data. In the digital world, you can connect with thousands of people and express emotions with a few touches. Yet the paradox here: the more connected we become, the lonelier we often feel. A smiling emoji can replace a real embrace, but it also reminds us that behind the screen lies an invisible distance that cannot be crossed. Next, consider the idea of extreme individualism. If personal freedom once liberated humans from oppression, its next step made each person see themselves as the absolute center. I am unique. I am the most important. This idea sparked limitless creativity, but also fragmented society. People struggle to find common ground, as everyone lives inside their own bubble. The paradox is that the more we emphasize the I, the more we lose our sense of the we. When take or prove it. Another idea, seemingly simple but endlessly debated, is the idea of social justice. In dreams, justice means perfect balance. The wrongdoer pays, the disadvantaged is compensated. Yet reality shows that the harder we try to enforce justice, the more elusive it becomes. A verdict can be correct by law, but wrong by fairness. A policy can be fair to the majority, yet unjust to a minority. The paradox: justice is always the guiding light, yet always a destination never fully reached. Pause for the idea of collective memory. Humans are different from other species because we can preserve memory across generations. From epics, stone tablets, to digital data, we seek to extend our existence through shared memory. But the paradox is this: collective memory saves us and imprisons us. It preserves lessons, yet traps us in unhealed wounds of history. A nation may take pride in a glorious past, yet also suffer endlessly from an ancient scar that never fades. And finally, in this section, consider the idea of immortality in memory. Humans know we will die, but we comfort ourselves by believing our names, our works, or our images will remain in others' minds. Yet the paradox is this: memory is fragile, fading, easily replaced. The immortality we pursue turns out to be temporary, like a candle that burns a few moments longer before it goes out. When you gather these ideas, freedom of speech, the digital world, extreme individualism, social justice, collective memory, immortality in memory, you will see that they all reach into the deepest layer of humanity, the longing to break beyond limits. But that very longing opens new paradoxes, pushing us forward while leaving us more uncertain than ever. And then, as you prepare to close your eyes, ask yourself this: is the idea we pursue to escape limits actually the very trap that locks us into a different kind of limit? There are ideas not born to explain the world, but to challenge our deepest beliefs about existence itself. They do not always bring usefulness or progress, but they force humanity to change the way we see ourselves. Let us begin with the idea of an infinite universe. For centuries, humans believed the universe had boundaries and a center, but when the idea of infinity appeared, all certainty dissolved. If the universe is truly infinite, then how small are we? And if there are endless stars and endless planets, are we truly special? The paradox here: the idea of infinity makes us feel like almost nothing, yet that very feeling ignites our hunger to search for meaning. Next, think of the idea of the illusory self. From ancient Buddhism to modern neuroscience, many voices suggest a shocking truth: the self may be an illusion. Thoughts, memories, emotions, all are a flowing stream, yet we gather them together and call them me. The paradox is this: if the self is not real, then who is listening? Who is thinking? Who is dreaming right now? Another modern idea with deeply philosophical roots is the idea of simulation. Today, many scientists and philosophers ask, could the entire universe be nothing more than a programmed simulation? If every feeling we have is only electronic signals, then does what we call reality exist at all? The paradox: even if we prove we live in a simulation, that very simulation remains the only reality we can ever know. Pause at the idea of perfect justice. Since ancient times, humans have dreamed of an order where everyone receives exactly what they deserve. But whenever we try to apply it, the complexity of life always tilts the scale. A person may work hard, yet never be rewarded. Another may act wrongly, yet still be honored. The paradox: perfect justice exists flawlessly in thought, but in reality, it is imperfection itself that makes us human. Another idea strikes directly at the human heart: the idea of biological immortality. Today, science dreams of endless life, of curing aging, of regeneration, and transplants. But the paradox is this: if death disappears, does life still hold meaning? Humans long for immortality, but it is mortality that makes every moment precious. Without death, we may lose life itself. And finally, in this section, consider the idea of absolute truth. From Greek philosophy to world religions, humans have sought a single, eternal truth. But across the centuries, each truth has been challenged and replaced. The paradox: the closer we move toward truth, the more layers of truth appear, keeping absolute truth forever beyond our reach. Perhaps the only truth is that we can never hold the whole of it. When you look back at these ideas, the infinite universe, the illusory self, simulation, perfect justice, biological immortality, absolute truth, you will see that they all push humanity beyond the comfort of familiar beliefs. They force us to see the world not as a stable home, but as a labyrinth of paradoxes. And so, as you rest tonight in the darkness, let this question echo: does there exist any idea without paradox? Or is paradox itself the true nature of every idea humanity has ever created? There are ideas that do not strike like lightning, but spread like an underground wave flowing through humanity. They do not belong to a single individual, but are the product of millions of minds connecting together, creating a force greater than any one person alone. Let us begin with the idea of collective intelligence. In the past, human strength was seen in the lone hero. But today, we recognize that when many minds share, debate, and build together, knowledge multiplies. The Internet, Wikipedia, and open communities are proof. Yet the paradox is this: collective intelligence is not always wiser than the individual. At times, it is easily swayed by the crowd, believing falsehoods only because the majority agrees. A sea of people can cheer for truth, but also for illusion. Another idea, closely tied to this age, is the idea of total surveillance. Humans once lived in secrecy, sharing only what they chose. But technology has turned every action into data. Where you are, what meal you just ordered, even the emotions you express. The idea that everything can be measured makes society more efficient, even safer. Yet the paradox appears: the safer we become, the less free we are. In a world without shadows, is it still a world made for humans? Next, consider the idea of absolute equality. It arose from the longing for fairness, that no one should have more than another, that everyone should stand level in all ways. At first, this seems like a beautiful dream. But the paradox is this: difference itself is the essence of life. No one can be the same in ability, in passion, in destiny. Efforts to flatten every difference can become suffocating, making society rigid. A world of complete equality may also be a world without freedom. Another idea, though rarely named, powerfully shapes how the world works: the idea of soft power. In the past, power was expressed through weapons and violence. Today, culture, art, and media have become subtler weapons. A song, a film, a social network can spread and shift the minds of millions. But the paradox: when soft power grows too strong, we can no longer tell what is free thought and what is invisible influence steering us. Now think of the idea of cosmic intelligence. Many believe that beyond humanity, other forms of intelligence must exist somewhere. Though it has never been proven, the very idea has reshaped how we see ourselves. If there is another civilization out there, would all that we take pride in still matter? And yet, the paradox is this: even without ever meeting them, we allow this idea to guide us, shaping culture, film, even national science strategies. Belief in what we cannot see becomes stronger than belief in what is right before us. And finally, in this section, let us pause at the idea of silence. In a noisy world, where everyone rushes to speak, to share, to express, silence becomes an idea full of power. Silence can be resistance, can be consent, can be healing. Yet the paradox is this: silence both frees and imprisons. It gives us stillness to return to ourselves, but it can also turn into denial, into suppression. When silence is forced, it is no longer freedom, but the cruelest form of oppression. When you look back at these ideas, collective intelligence, total surveillance, absolute equality, soft power, cosmic intelligence, and silence, you will see that they reach not only into society, but into the deepest layer of human nature. They reveal that we are creatures who long to connect and also long to hide, who desire fairness and also need difference, who want to speak and also need to be silent. And so, let this question follow you into sleep. Which of these ideas is true freedom? Or is freedom only a fleeting moment between the chains that ideas take turns wrapping around us? There are ideas like a double-edged sword. On one side, promising to lift humanity higher. On the other, making us tremble before consequences we cannot yet imagine. They are as beautiful as dreams and as dangerous as nightmares. Let us begin with the idea of unending technological progress. Humans believe every problem can be solved with technology: illness with medicine, poverty with automation, loneliness with social networks. This idea creates limitless hope. But the paradox is this: technology itself breeds new problems. Pollution, weapons of destruction, dependence on machines. The more we progress, the more we must race to heal the wounds created by progress itself. Next, consider the idea of general artificial intelligence. Unlike past machines that were only tools, artificial intelligence is not just a hand, it is a brain, a companion that learns and creates. Many dream of the day when AI replaces human labor, freeing us for leisure and infinite creativity. Yet the paradox is this: if machines do everything better, where will humans find meaning? The idea of liberation from work may instead open a vast emptiness in the human spirit. Another idea, seemingly humane, is the idea of the right to be forgotten. In the age of data, every trace of us remains: childhood photos, youthful mistakes, careless words. The right to be forgotten arose to protect people from the permanent sentence of digital memory. Yet the paradox is this: if everything can be erased, does history still exist? And if we can always start over, do we ever truly learn from what we once did wrong? Now look at the idea of artificial happiness. Humans have always searched for shortcuts to joy. Through drugs, through brain technology, through simulated experiences. A pill that erases sadness. A machine that implants happy memories. But the paradox is this: if happiness is artificially created, is it still real happiness? Joy without effort, without meaning, is only a chemical signal. And then, are we truly living, or only programmed to feel fine? Another idea stretches beyond nations: the idea of global ethics. Humans now speak of animal rights, environmental rights, and the rights of generations yet unborn. It is an attempt to think beyond narrow borders, to imagine responsibility for the entire Earth. But the paradox is this: the more we try to create one shared morality, the more we discover that each culture sees through a different lens. What is moral in one place may be immoral in another. Global ethics in aspiration is unity. In reality, it risks becoming imposition. And finally, in this section, let us turn to the idea of beauty. Since ancient times, humanity has worshipped beauty as a sacred standard. Art, architecture, fashion, all revolve around the question, what is beautiful? Yet the paradox is this: each age, each culture sets different and even contradictory standards. Beauty, thought to be absolute, is revealed as only the mirror of collective habit. And when humanity becomes obsessed with beauty, it becomes a chain, binding us so that we no longer live true to ourselves. When you look back at these ideas, technological progress, general artificial intelligence, the right to be forgotten, artificial happiness, global ethics, and beauty, you will see they all spring from the desire for something better. Yet the deeper paradox is this: every step forward opens new fractures. Every dream carries a shadow. And so, as you listen to these ideas in the stillness of night, ask yourself, are we truly moving forward, or only circling endlessly within new paradoxes dressed in the glittering clothes of progress? There are ideas that do not build machines, do not raise cities, and do not become laws, yet they touch the deepest part of the human heart, where we confront our very existence. These are existential ideas, questions we can never fully solve, only live alongside. Let us begin with the idea of free will. Humans have always wanted to believe we choose our own lives, that we choose our career, our love, our way of living. But when neuroscience shows that many decisions are already activated in the brain before we are aware of them, a paradox is revealed. Perhaps we are only witnesses to decisions already programmed within us. So, is freedom real? Or is it an illusion we cling to in order to feel less alone inside the machinery of cause and effect? Another idea, opposite but parallel, is the idea of destiny. From Greek mythology to religious belief, humanity once thought every fate was already written. This idea gave comfort, that we need not fight meaninglessly against life, because everything has its place. Yet the paradox is this: if everything is fixed, then what is the point of effort? And if there is no effort, what is left of what it means to be human? Next comes the idea of meaninglessness. 20th century existential philosophy raised a painful question. If the universe is infinite and without purpose, then what meaning does one small human life have? Camus once said, "The important thing is not whether life has meaning, but how we live it." The paradox is this. When we accept that life may have no meaning, we discover a freedom to create meaning for ourselves. Another idea, heavy yet unavoidable, is the idea of alienation. Marx spoke of alienation in labor, when humans are turned into tools within production. Existential philosophers spoke of alienation from our true selves, when we live according to standards imposed from outside. The paradox: the harder we try to fit in, to become someone, the greater the risk of losing who we really are. Remember Nietzsche's idea of the Übermensch. He called humanity to go beyond old morality, beyond even God, to become beings who define their own values. This idea is thrilling, but also dangerous. It opens the path of liberation, yet places a crushing burden on each of us. Without shared standards, every individual must invent their own. The paradox: absolute freedom may turn into absolute weight. And finally, in this section, let us pause at the idea of hope. Throughout history, hope has been the guiding light. The slave hoped for freedom. The sick hoped for recovery. Humanity hoped for a better future. Yet the paradox of hope is this: it saves us from despair, yet can also chain us to the future, keeping us from living fully in the present. Hope can be wings, but it can also be shackles. When you look back at these ideas, free will, destiny, meaninglessness, alienation, the Übermensch, and hope, you will see that none of them has a certain answer. They are like mirrors facing one another, reflecting endlessly, so that no matter how far we walk, there is no exit. But perhaps, inside this labyrinth, we begin to see what life truly is. And so, let this question walk beside you into the gentle darkness of the night. If all existential ideas are paradoxes, then is it possible that life itself, with all its contradictions and limits, is the greatest idea humanity has ever created? Perhaps among all the ideas that shaped humanity, none is more haunting than the idea of death. Death is both the absolute truth and the unreachable mystery. It terrifies us, yet also makes life precious. The paradox: without death, perhaps we would never know how to cherish life. It is limitation that creates beauty. Like a piece of music, if it never ended, would the melody still feel sacred? Another haunting idea is the idea of memory. Humans exist not only through bodies, but through memory that ties us to ourselves. Yet the paradox is this: memory is both faithful and deceptive. It can lift us with warmth, but also wound us with old scars. And at times, memory is not even true. It stitches and distorts, changing with time. So if memory itself is not absolute, can the self built upon memory be absolute? Think of the idea of belief. Humans cannot live without believing in something: God, science, justice, love, or simply that tomorrow will come. Belief is the glue of community, the lamp in the dark. Yet the paradox: the stronger belief grows, the more easily it turns into blindness. A belief can raise humanity higher, or push us into war, extremism, and hate. Belief is wings, and also chains. Another idea, deeper still, is the idea of eternal present. Many spiritual traditions teach that only now truly exists. The past is only memory, the future only imagination. To live fully in the present is to find freedom. But the paradox: humans seem unable to live entirely in the present. We are always pulled back into the past, always drifting into the future. The idea of now becomes a shining door, always open but never fully stepped through. Consider the idea of fear. Fear is seen as the enemy, something to overcome. But without fear, humanity may not have survived. Fear makes us alert, makes us flee danger, makes us protect one another. The paradox: fear is both enemy and ally. It binds us in limits, but also saves us from destruction. So, should humanity conquer fear, or learn to live alongside it? And finally, in this section, let us rest at the idea of love. Among countless concepts, love may be the one idea that transcends every system and every era. It is present in religion, in philosophy, in art. Love softens the world's cruelty, yet also makes us most vulnerable. The paradox: the more we love, the more we can be hurt. But without love, what would remain of life? Except emptiness. When you look back at these ideas, death, memory, belief, eternal present, fear, and love, you will see that they are not abstract knowledge outside of us, but threads woven tightly through our very lives. They are not only ideas of humanity, they are personal ideas, living in every breath you take. And so, let a quiet question follow you into sleep. If death, memory, belief, the present, fear, and love are all paradoxes, then perhaps paradox itself is the true shape of what it means to be human. There are ideas that do not revolve only around daily life, but rise higher, touching the clouds of the universe and the realm of the metaphysical. These ideas are like guiding flames, but also like long shadows falling across us, giving humans both comfort and trembling. Let us begin with the idea of God. Since the earliest times, humans have looked up at the starry sky and asked, who created all of this? The idea of a supreme being became the foundation of countless civilizations, bringing faith, morality, and unity. Yet the paradox is this: the same idea has led to wars, divisions, and judgment between people. God has been a symbol of love and also an excuse for hatred. And the question has never found a certain answer. Is God real, or only a mirror reflecting human longing? Another idea that shook human knowledge is the idea of the immortal soul. Humans struggle to accept that they vanish completely after death. The belief that we continue to exist in some form, heaven, hell, or reincarnation, brought hope. Yet the paradox here: belief in immortality can make us forget the value of a finite life. When all our hope rests in another world, we may neglect the one right in front of us. Next, think of the idea of karma. From Eastern philosophy, it planted the belief that every action leaves a mark, that universal justice will appear at some point, in this life or another. This idea comforts us. Nothing is meaningless. But the paradox is this: if we believe too strongly in karma, we may become passive, accepting injustice rather than fighting it. Karma gives us hope for justice, yet can strip away the power of action in the present. Another idea reaches even higher: the idea of a beginning to the universe. When the Big Bang Theory emerged, humans at last had an answer to the question, where did the universe begin? But immediately the paradox appeared. If the universe had a beginning, then what came before it? If there was a first moment, what created it? The answer seems always to retreat farther into infinity, leaving us awestruck before a mystery that never closes. Pause at the idea of the multiverse. Perhaps the universe we live in is only one among countless others. Each choice we make might create another branch, another parallel world where we live a different life. This idea feels like a dream, but it shakes the notion of a single reality. If there are infinite worlds, then is this me still special? The paradox: the more we believe in the multiverse, the harder it is to find meaning in our own uniqueness. And finally, in this section, remember the idea of transcendence. Humans have always longed to rise above our limits, above suffering, above death, above all boundaries. In religion, this is enlightenment or salvation. In philosophy, it is transcendence. Yet the paradox: in reaching for transcendence, the very act of seeking pulls us away from the present. It is like climbing a mountain, without realizing that the mountain has always been the ground beneath our feet. When you look back at these ideas, God, the immortal soul, karma, the beginning of the universe, the multiverse, transcendence, you will see that none lies outside of humanity. They are mirrors, projecting our deepest hopes and fears. They do not only speak of the cosmos, they speak of the mind that imagined them. And as night falls, as you rest in silence, let this question echo slowly. Are we searching for truth out there, or only wandering inside a maze of ideas we ourselves created to comfort our hearts? On the journey of seeking meaning, humans do not stop at questions of the material world, but turn toward the mysterious. There, we are no longer speaking of visible tools, but touching concepts so abstract that they feel at once like saving light and endless darkness. Let us begin with the idea of eternal time. Many religions and philosophies have claimed there is an eternal life beyond the cycle of birth and death. This idea brought great comfort. Life does not end with death. Yet, the paradox. If time is truly eternal, then does any moment hold meaning? Without an end, do joy and sorrow still have value? Perhaps life is precious because it is finite, while eternity risks becoming an endless loop with no way out. Another idea, central across religions, is the idea of salvation. Humans feel guilty, flawed, not enough. The belief that a compassionate hand can redeem us from darkness brought hope, ignited faith. Yet the paradox: salvation both frees and binds. It comforts people to surrender responsibility to a higher power, while in truth, only humans can change their fate. Salvation can be a miracle, but it can also be the shadow that keeps us from standing tall on our own feet. Next, think of the idea of cosmic harmony. Many spiritual traditions say humans are not separate, but one note in the infinite symphony of the universe. This idea brings peace. We are never alone, always within a greater rhythm. Yet the paradox: the more we dream of perfect harmony, the more we face disharmony in real life. Violence, conflict, injustice all seem to deny the dream. Is harmony an objective reality, or a gentle illusion to soothe the human heart? Another, even more mysterious idea is the idea of the absolute. From Plato to modern thinkers, humans have longed for ultimate truth, absolute beauty, absolute goodness. This idea is like a mountain on the horizon, never reached, yet always approached. The paradox: the closer we come, the farther it retreats. Perhaps the absolute does not exist as a destination, but only within the longing itself. The absolute may not be something we reach, but the eternal flow that compels us to keep walking. Pause at the idea of the cosmic cycle. Some philosophies teach that the universe does not only begin and end, but repeats endlessly: birth, expansion, contraction, rebirth. If so, then everything we do now will repeat infinitely. The paradox: if everything repeats, do we still have freedom? And if this is only one loop among millions, are we living it for the first time or the millionth? And finally, in this section, consider the idea of absolute silence. Many traditions say that when we move beyond language, beyond thought, beyond all images, we will touch ultimate truth in silence. Yet the paradox: the moment we name silence, it is no longer silence. The moment we try to grasp the absolute, it becomes relative. Perhaps the absolute cannot be spoken, only lived. When you look back at these ideas, eternal time, salvation, cosmic harmony, the absolute, the cosmic cycle, silence, you will see that none can be proven or disproven. They exist at the border between hope and paradox. They are not meant only to be believed, but to be contemplated. And so, in the quiet of the night, as you close your eyes, let this question drift softly in your mind. Are the mysteries we seek only mirrors of our longing for eternity? And is the true paradox this, that we search for the unchanging inside a world that never stops changing? There are ideas that do not live inside temples of religion, nor rise from political speeches, but are born in laboratories, on chalkboards filled with equations, and inside rows of cold numbers. Yet they open the deepest paradoxes of existence. Let us begin with the idea of entropy. According to the second law of thermodynamics, this universe is drifting toward disorder. Everything moves from order to chaos, from a candle burning bright to ashes fading away, from a healthy body to old age. This idea makes us realize that endings are not exceptions, but the rule. Yet the paradox is this: from the very principle of disorder, life itself has emerged. Humanity, a fragile form of order, was born within a universe sliding toward chaos. Perhaps order and disorder are not enemies, but companions that exist because of one another. Another idea that has shaken both philosophy and science is consciousness. For centuries, we have not known what consciousness truly is. It is not muscle, not flesh. It is the stream of experience, the I that knows it is alive. Yet the paradox appears. The brain is a physical machine of electricity and chemistry. So how does it create subjective experience, blue, sorrow, joy? This question, even now, has no answer. Perhaps consciousness is not only a product of matter, but the hidden essence of the universe itself. Next, think of the idea of chaos theory. We once believed the world could be predicted if we knew enough data. Newton once said that if we knew the position and velocity of every particle, we could predict the future. But chaos theory revealed that even the smallest change can lead to vast differences, the butterfly effect. The paradox. The universe is both lawful and unpredictable. Everything can be written into formulas, yet those very formulas open an ocean of uncertainty. Another modern idea, seemingly cold but profoundly philosophical, is the idea of information. Many scientists suggest that the essence of the universe is not matter, but information. A particle, a star, a human being, all may be only arrangements of data bits. Yet the paradox is this: if everything is only information, then who is the reader of that information? If reality is only a string of symbols, does there need to be an observer to turn those symbols into life? And if there is no observer, does the universe even exist? Pause at the idea that grows from this: the universe as a computer. If everything is information, then perhaps the universe is a vast machine calculating itself. Stars, planets, and living beings may be nothing more than streams of data inside a program. Yet the paradox: if the universe is a computer, who is the programmer? Or is the universe simply computing itself? And when you ask, "Who am I?" is that question itself a line of data reflecting the program it belongs to? When you gather these ideas, entropy, consciousness, chaos, information, you will see they are not only scientific concepts, but philosophical doors. They show us that the world is not simple, not just collisions of matter, but a web of paradoxes. Order born from disorder, experience born from matter, laws born from unpredictability, information born from the mystery of the observer. And so, in the gentle darkness surrounding you now, let a question echo in your mind. If the essence of the universe is chaos, consciousness, and information, could it be that ideas themselves are the true atoms of reality, the building blocks from which everything is made? There are ideas that do not only change how we see the world, but shake the very foundations of what we thought was obvious. They are like strange doors. Once opened, we no longer know which room we are standing in reality, or only a dream drawn out by equations. Let us begin with the idea of quantum physics. In the world of tiny particles, familiar rules break apart. A particle can exist in many states at once. An electron can be here and there at the same time, and the act of observation can change the outcome. The paradox. The microscopic world seems absurd, yet it is the foundation of everything we see around us, from the chair you sit on to the breath you take in. The solid world we trust is built on an uncertain and dreamlike base. Next, Consider Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. It says that we cannot know both the exact position and the exact velocity of a particle. The more precisely we measure one, the less we know of the other. This shattered the classical dream that if we knew all the data, we could predict the future. The paradox. The universe does not lack information. Its very nature prevents us from absolute certainty. Uncertainty is not a flaw in our knowledge. It is built into reality itself. Another overwhelming idea is the cosmic web. When scientists looked deeper into the universe, they discovered immense filaments of galaxies, woven into networks that resemble neurons in the brain. The vast universe out there, in its structure, mirrors the human brain, the place where consciousness arises. The paradox. If our brain looks like the universe, could it be that the universe itself is thinking? Could it be that we are only a tiny fragment of a vast cosmic mind, dreaming of itself? Now look at one of the most modern and controversial ideas: superintelligent artificial intelligence. If humans can create a mind more intelligent than their own, how will the future change? Some believe it will solve every problem: disease, poverty, war. Others fear it will view humans as useless, the way we view insects. The paradox. Humanity creates intelligence to remain in control, yet may end by losing control. Like Prometheus stealing fire from mankind, we may have handed ourselves the flame that burns everything down. Another idea, often discussed in the philosophy of technology, is the idea of convergence. Biotechnology, artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, quantum physics, all are converging. The paradox. The more tools we create to control the world, the less certain we are of what human still means. Humanity may become something else, a hybrid of biology and technology. And if that happens, what will remain of our humanity? And finally, in this section, pause at the idea of the final frontier of knowledge. Humans have always believed every question could have an answer. Yet the deeper we search, the more layers of mystery appear. How did the universe begin? What is consciousness? Does the absolute exist? The paradox. Knowledge does not shrink mystery, it expands it. The more we know, the larger the unknown grows. Perhaps the final frontier is not where knowledge ends, but where it dissolves into silence. When you gather these ideas, quantum physics, uncertainty, the cosmic web, superintelligence, technological convergence, the final frontier, you will see they are not just knowledge, but living paradoxes. They give us hope, and they overwhelm us with wonder. And so, as you drift into sleep, let one quiet question move through your mind. If every layer of knowledge opens into new paradoxes, then perhaps ultimate knowledge is simply this: to accept that the universe does not need an explanation, but only a listening presence. Across hundreds of ideas, from science, religion, philosophy to art, humanity still seems far from the final boundary. Yet perhaps beneath them all lie ideas that no longer want to explain the world, but instead invite us to return, to face the very nature of existence itself. Let us begin with the idea of unity. In many traditions, people believe that everything is one. The self and the world, matter and spirit, light and darkness, are only different expressions of the same reality. This idea brings deep comfort. We are not separate, never truly alone. But the paradox here is this: if all is one, then why do we feel divided? If unity is truth, why do we live only in fragments? Perhaps unity is not something to be found, but something that has always been here, hidden by our dualistic eyes. Another idea, subtle but powerful, is the idea of the life cycle of ideas themselves. We often think ideas are eternal, but in truth, they too are born, grow, age, and die. Ideas of gods, of empires, of science, all have their rise and their decline. The paradox. Humans create ideas to make themselves eternal, yet ideas live their own lives, independent of their creators. They evolve, grow beyond control, and sometimes turn back to shape the very people who made them, as if ideas were the ones truly alive, and humans only temporary carriers passing them along. Next, we meet the idea of nothingness. In Eastern philosophy, nothingness is not emptiness, but the foundation for everything that exists. It is like space that allows wind to move, like silence that allows music to sound. But the paradox, when we try to grasp nothingness, it immediately disappears. Nothingness exists only when we do not try to turn it into something. Perhaps nothingness is not meant to be understood, but lived in the moment we release all clinging. And finally, pause at the idea of awakening. Awakening is not about adding something new, but about realizing what has always been present. It means to live without being pulled back by the past, without being dragged by the future, without being bound by ideas. But the paradox is this: when we strive to awaken, the very effort pushes us farther away. Awakening is not a goal to reach, but a state that arrives when we stop seeking. Like night fading away, not because the sun chased it, but because the sun had always been there. When you gather these ideas, unity, the life of ideas, nothingness, awakening, you will see they are no longer outer knowledge, but invitations to return inward. They no longer demand that we explain the universe, but whisper softly that perhaps we need only to live, to exist, to breathe, and to quietly feel that we are here. And so, in this deep night, as you close your eyes, let the final question rise like a breath. Do all ideas, from the grand to the small, from the visible to the mystical, finally lead us back to the same place, a place where no idea is needed, only silent presence remains? You have traveled with me through a long journey, where hundreds of ideas wove together like stars across the night sky. Each idea was a small lamp, lighting one corner of reality, but no lamp could ever illuminate the whole. And now, at the end of the path, let us pause in silence to look back on the road behind us. We began with concrete ideas: the round earth, the number 0, democracy, electricity, the internet. Then we moved farther to ideas of love, freedom, justice, death, the universe, the multiverse. Finally, we touched the metaphysical: nothingness, unity, awakening. And in every step, one paradox remained. Ideas are born to free us, yet they can also bind us. Perhaps this is the nature of ideas. They are doors. When opened, we see a new world. But if we cling too tightly, the door itself becomes a wall. Ideas are not wrong, nor right. They are tools. Like a raft that carries us across a river, once we reach the other side, we no longer need to carry it on our back. Consider this: all the greatest ideas of humanity about God, about science, about love, about truth, may in the end only be temporary steps, guiding us towards something simpler: presence, a breath, a heartbeat, a quiet moment where no explanation is needed. The final paradox may be this: after passing through all ideas, what remains is not another idea, but the release of ideas. Like a climber who finally realizes the summit was not high above, but beneath his feet all along. But do not mistake this as denying the power of ideas. On the contrary, it is because of ideas that humanity has come this far, has created, has loved, has sacrificed. Ideas are the collective breath of humanity. Yet when the circle is complete, we realize ideas are not the destination, but the road. And the destination, if there is one, rests in silence beyond all concepts. So tonight, as you drift into sleep, you need not hold on to every idea we pass through. Only keep the echo that humans live in a universe of paradox, and it is these very contradictions that make life rich, mysterious, and worth living. Let ideas be like dreams. Let them come and go. Let them lift you high, then let them return you to the ground. And in the stillness between two breaths, perhaps you will see that no further idea is needed. Life itself is already complete. And so, the final question I wish to leave with you is not one to answer now, but one to carry with you through life. Could it be that the greatest idea does not lie in books or lectures, but in the simple life unfolding right now as you breathe, as you listen, as you exist? You have traveled through a long journey, where hundreds of ideas opened and closed like doors in a dream. Now, you do not need to carry them all. You need only hold on to this gentle stillness. Let the questions drift away like ripples on water, and let your heart rest in the present moment. Tonight, you need search for nothing more. You are already enough, right here, as you breathe, as you close your eyes, as you quietly exist. Sleep well.